Hi, and thanks for viewing this video in which we'll share a couple of useful tips and guidance on how to prepare your Fulbright application in case you are applying this year for one of our Fulbright grants. First, I'm going to give an overview again of the application process and timeline, and then we're going to dive into the different documents that we are going to talk about today. So, for example, we're going to talk about the personal statement, the Americanized resume, and then finish with the recommendation letter. So, these are some of the required documents as part of the application. Each year, our deadline to submit an application is December 1st. So, that is the last day that you can submit your online application. And then there's some other steps that follow. So, for example, in late January, top ranked applicants are invited for a virtual interview. And then in the course of February, successful applicants are notified of their nomination, followed by the formal approval in late March. Now, the first step when you want to apply for any of our awards is to visit our website, which can be fulbright.be if you're applying for one of our national awards, so as a Belgian or Luxembourger. But you can also apply for the Fulbright Schumann program, in which case you need to visit fulbrightschumann.eu. You will need to find the right award, review any details, and there is on the webpage you will find a button Apply Now, which will lead you to the online application platform, which you will first need to create an account if you don't already have one, and that's how you can start your application. Now, the application consists of different components, and today we're only going to talk about some of them. And if you're applying in the student category, so if you're applying for a grant for graduate study, so a master's, or doctoral research as a PhD student, then you will apply in the student category. And one of the required documents is the personal statement essay. Now, your personal statement should be a narrative essay describing how you have achieved your current goals and typically includes information about your education, practical experience, special interests, and career plans. We recommend to describe any significant factors that have influenced your educational or professional development. This essay should not merely be a summary of your resume and neither a summary of your study plan. Similarly, the length is typically 1 or 2 pages and it offers you the chance to present yourself in a well-rounded way, talking about your past experiences, interests, and in particular, your motivations for applying to a particular program and why you want to go to the US. When applying to US universities, so for example, if you're applying for admission for a master's program, your written essays will really matter. So this is an example of what an admissions officer at Princeton University has told us. It's possible to redeem yourself or to kill your chances of admission with the personal statement. What's most important to me is for the candidate to make a compelling case for themselves. I want to be persuaded that I should admit this person or student. Again, the essay gives you the opportunity to make your case and show why you are an ideal candidate. Before even starting to write your personal statement, try to think about the following questions. After all, this should be your own story and how you want to present yourself as a potential Fulbrighter or to a student to a certain US university. Where were you born and raised? How does this shape how you see the world? What have you studied in life? What are the subjects you are most curious about? What background, identity, interest, or talent is so meaningful to you that your application would be incomplete without it? What inspires you to apply for the Fulbright program or this US university? After reflecting about these questions, you can start to think more specifically about what you want to include in your essay. Start by writing down the answer to these questions. Why am I applying? What do I hope to get out of this experience? What are my long-term goals and how will this help me achieve them? What's special or unique about me or my life story? What details, personal history, any genuine notable accomplishments, people or events that have shaped you or influenced your goals might help the committee better understand you or help you set apart from other applicants. What is your educational and professional background? When did you originally become interested in your field of study, and what have you since learned about it and about yourself that has further stimulated your interest and reinforced your conviction that you are well suited for this field? When you are writing your essay, keep an eye on whether it is selective, clear, and original. The general idea behind selectivity is that you must include the right kind of information, and also that you must refrain from including irrelevant information. Your choices will show whether or not you have good judgment. For example, it would normally be a mistake to describe the details of your academic history unless it is to highlight something that is especially unique. The people reading your personal statement can look at your transcripts showing exam scores if they want to know details about your academic record. Clarity refers to how well you express your ideas in writing. Your statement should be logical and it must be written with proper syntax and grammar, and of course free of spelling mistakes and typos. A statement that contains these type of errors will make you appear unprofessional and careless, regardless of the actual content of your essay. Originality is important as well because a standard personal statement will not help you stand out from the crowd. You need to grab the reader's attention at the outset and hold their interest to the end. One of the most difficult things that you are likely to face when preparing your statement is just getting started. Remember, it takes time to be creative, so try to be patient. Ideas will come eventually. Do not be afraid to start over if a plan you had no longer seems good, or if you think of something better. It is common for applicants to rewrite their essays countless times, but eventually it is only the end result that counts. More specifically, these are some general recommendations on what you should and should not do. It is suggested that you try to brag about yourself, tell a story or find a specific angle, draw conclusions about the value of your past experiences, use specific examples whenever possible, and to proofread to avoid grammatical errors or misspellings. On the other hand, it is not suggested that you, of course, lie about your achievements, include irrelevant or unnecessary material, recap information from your CV or application, or use cliches or unnecessarily certain vocabulary words. In addition, we recommend to be specific when talking about relevant experiences. For example, instead of being vague or general about a certain work experience you could actually make it more relevant. For example, the before would be, in the first project I managed, I learned many valuable lessons about the importance of teamwork. Instead, you could make it more specific. For example, in the first project I managed, I made an effort to incorporate all my colleagues as equal members of a team, soliciting their feedback and deferring to their expertise as needed. On the other hand, try to avoid using more words than necessary just to fill up your essay. So try to be clear and concise when possible. So in this case, for example, the corrected or the recommended paragraph would be, completing the project at last gave me an enduring sense of fulfillment. Finally, do not use certain words just for the sake of showing off your vocabulary. So you can certainly use appropriate terms when needed, but try to stay away from uncommon synonyms that most people don't actually use. So for example, if you would say, although I did a plethora of activities in college, my assiduous efforts enabled me to succeed. An alternative could be, although I juggled many activities in college, I succeeded through persistent work. Next, we're going to look at a few examples for you to avoid common mistakes. So of course, we're not able to give actual essays from applicants. That being said, we have prepared some brief paragraphs as good or bad examples. So this is an example of an opening paragraph that is not very interesting or memorable. It also includes cliches and the use of unnecessary terms. So, in other words, you really want to create an interesting and memorable opening paragraph for your essay and try to avoid cliches. A good example of a particular statement you can include in your essay. So, for example, this is a statement that tells a story and emphasizes the value of a past experience. So, in other words, you really need to find a certain angle, draw conclusions about it, and include it in your statement. So you can see in this case, I can read it. So this experience inspired me to start my own nonprofit organization. Through various outlets, this organization helps people without health insurance find subsidized care. So this is just an example of how someone finds a different angle from their personal background and incorporates it in their essay. This is another bad example of a paragraph that contains grammatical and spelling errors and includes unnecessary information that was already included in the resume. So you can see they gave a very generic statement about the fact that they did an internship, which is not really that relevant in this essay. And you can also see several spelling and grammar mistakes. So try not to recap too much information from your CV. Anything that can found on your CV, you do not need to repeat in your essay. Also, again, make sure to proofread your essay as many times as possible. Maybe let someone else read it, just to avoid any common errors and typos. You can actually address your qualifications by making relevant connections from your resume as opposed to just copying and pasting details from your resume. So in this case, you can address a qualification and make a connection between your resume in a bullet point in your essay. And again, try to find an angle of your own in your own story. So in this case, it's someone highlights an accomplishment, and it's actually a very good way to mention this, include this in an essay, because they clearly offered a solution. They had there was a challenge, and they overcome it. And this is just a great way to include relevant experiences in your essay. And finally, another example of information that is not really helpful for your application or doesn't have any added value. So yeah, any sort of information that doesn't seem relevant and seems unnecessary, just try to avoid it, to include it in your essay. But then again, as I already mentioned earlier, it's really recommended to talk about challenges, and you can even mention past failures as long as you explain them truthfully, and more importantly, emphasize how you have handled these challenges and how you improved on them. So in this example, it's again going back to trying to tell a story that engages the reader and addresses the challenges and how you have overcome them. So this can actually be a benefit to your essay. So in this case, the example is that they faced difficulties with taking a history course. But through this, they found out that they actually have a passion for the study of history, and then finished their college education in history. So as long as you address the challenge and are able to make something positive out of it, then you can certainly include it in your personal statement. All right, next I'm going to talk about the CV or resume, often referred to in our grant application the American style or Americanized resume. So first off, you will often hear that people make a distinction between a resume and a CV. So these are two terms that are often used interchangeably but do not necessarily mean the same thing. While a CV tends to be a long, detailed outline of every accomplishment or experience you had, resumes tend to be much shorter and be a shorter summary of your achievements that are more tailored to a specific job or position that you are applying for. CVs are most often used in parts of the world outside of the US, but are actually also used in the US when applying for an academic or research position, and they are typically longer than one page. Resumes are much more commonly used in the US for any type of job or position and are usually not longer than 1 or 2 pages. Most students applying for a Fulbright grant will prepare a resume, while postdoc researchers and professors will probably have have a CV with a lot more academic achievements and publications, for example. Now, the first thing to include at the very top of your resume is, of course, your name and contact information, and then followed by very common sections or categories, including education, experience, and skills. Your resume can also include additional sections to mention academic publications, languages, any membership or activities in professional associations, certain honors, as well, awards, fellowships you have received, additional certificates, and even volunteer work. It's really important to note that you should not include personal information such as your date or place of birth, nationality, marital status, or a photo of yourself. These are all things that are normally not included on an American style resume. You could add information as well about your interests or hobbies, although this is less relevant on your resume and can also be mentioned in your essays instead. Now, don't be afraid to really brag about yourself when writing your resume. So, for example, highlighting an incredible academic score or professional achievement without exaggerating, of course. You can also brag while remaining humble and honest. Stay away from generalizations. So, we do notice that sometimes applicants can be a little bit more hesitant to talk about their achievements. While in America, it's very common for people to be very comfortable with highlighting their accomplishments. Especially if you are a current student or a recent graduate, you should definitely highlight your educational experience as one of the core features of your resume. Furthermore, try to make good use of space and avoid leaving too much white space on your resume. If someone looking at your resume sees a lot of empty space, they may think that you do not have enough relevant experience or achievements to present. On the other hand, of course, overcrowding your resume with too many words, too much information also can make your resume hard to read. So yeah, try to find a good balance on your resume on all the information you include. And we'll finish with a couple of more specific examples near the end. Now, this probably goes without saying, but do not forget to proofread your resume for any grammar or spelling mistakes. You might want to ask someone to look over it just to have a fresh pair of eyes, because we all know that at some point after having read something or when you draft something yourself, it's sometimes easy to miss certain mistakes. Lastly, as a general note, it's recommended to follow the reverse chronological format when listing your credentials, which means adding your most recent experiences first and then going back further in time, so your oldest experience will be down the list. In the next section, we're going to talk about the different categories on your resume and explain what type of information should be included. So in the education section, you should include details about any post-secondary education, such as the college or university where you completed your bachelor's or master's. When we say location, we mean the name of the city, so not the exact address. You should also include the dates you attended, the degree you received, the concentration or major you did when applicable, and optionally the degree honor if you want to include that. For example, graduated with distinction. You can either list any rewards, certificates, or honors linked to a program in this section, or choose to list them separately. Finally, you can mention special academic experiences such as study abroad programs or exchange semesters. The experience section should include relevant information about your previous or current work experience. So you can include things like unpaid internships or other relevant work experience, such as full-time, part-time jobs, research, teaching positions, which is why this section is sometimes labeled more broadly as professional experience. You should include the job title, name of the organization, and the city in which it was located, the dates, of course, that you were employed or engaged in a certain position, and some bullet points that summarize your main role and responsibilities. So make sure to only highlight clear and quantitative goals that you have accomplished for each position, and avoid vague descriptions. If you only recently graduated and have limited work experience, you can also choose to list the education section first and put more emphasis on academic achievements instead. A general remark is that you can align dates either on the right or on the left, but just try to be consistent layout-wise. Aligning dates on the left emphasizes the amount of experience or time, while having them on the right may draw some more attention to the position itself, so it kind of depends. Now, these are some examples of skills that can be included in this section of the resume. So when talking about skills, we make a distinction, or you can make a distinction between hard and soft skills. So on one hand, hard skills are generally defined as measurable abilities, such as knowing how to use a certain program or writing, design, research methodologies, any sort of skill that is measurable and that you typically have achieved through a formal education or training or years of experience. So examples are proficiency in any of the like a G Suite, like Excel, Word, or even MySQL if you're a researcher, C++, any sort of data analysis programs or design skills. You can choose to add all, you can choose also to add your languages in this section, or you can list them as a separate category. So any spoken languages that you know, you could include them here or in a separate section. Soft skills are less measurable and are considered a combination of social skills, personality traits, or communication skills. Examples are leadership, communication, work ethic, interpersonal skills, and time management. Alternatively, you can mention any soft skills in your work experience or personal essay. Make sure to only highlight skills that are relevant to your work or studies and not skills related to hobbies or things that you do in your free time. Also try not to mention every skill you ever had. So this just goes back to try to really highlight only the most relevant and your strongest skills. Now, in addition to the main sections of your resume, which are education, professional experience, and skills, as the main components, you can also include other relevant accomplishments that will make you stand out. So examples are academic publications related to research, languages, including the proficiency level, workshops or seminars you attended, and membership in certain organizations. You can also choose to include awards and scholarships separately. Extracurricular activities are very important to include as well. So list any experiences that you think are relevant to include while applying for a Fulbright grant, such as being a member or a founding leader of a certain volunteer group or nonprofit organization, maybe a certain internship you are particularly proud of and that help you grow professionally, or volunteer work, any sports you've been active in. You should not include every sort of job you've had. Just again, try to highlight the most relevant experiences. And again, extracurricular activities are very important to highlight on your resume. Now, when writing bullet points that summarize your experiences, skills, or previous roles, you should always try to use action-oriented verbs that exemplify exactly what it is that you did. So here you can see some examples of verbs that you can use depending on the type of skill you are writing about. So examples of action-oriented verbs are administered, analyzed, collaborated, guided. So these are just action-oriented verbs, which are much more appropriate to use on your resume. So again, some more examples of these kind of verbs. So engineered, supported, calculated, maintained. And then finally, we would like to focus a little bit on resume formatting. Of course, how your resume will look in the end is completely up to you. So it's a very personal thing. That being said, we would like to give you some general recommendations and perhaps even an example. So the most common resume dimensions in Europe are A4. In the US, it's letter size. Letter size is a little bit shorter than A4. You can choose either A4 or letter size for the Fulbright application. Both are okay. Again, letter size is mainly used in the US and has a slightly shorter length, but again, you're uploading a PDF in your application, so it's digital, so it doesn't matter that much. As I already mentioned, we do not recommend including a photo of yourself on your resume. That is not something that is done on an American style resume, even though it has been common on European style resumes. As I talked about at the beginning, we recommend limiting the number of pages of your resume or CV to 1 or 2. Although we would understand if you are a postdoc researcher, a professor, and you want to list all your academic publications, that's maybe an exception. Just note that technically there is a limit normally on the number of pages that you can upload in the online application. Using a line space of 1.15 is very common as well, and of course using the same margins on all sides of the page. Additionally, choose a professional font and make sure your headings and body text are easy to read. Overall, you should ensure a clear and balanced layout. You can certainly make your resume stand out with using maybe a less common font or a little bit of color or visual elements. Just be careful with making your resume maybe too busy or over designed. So unless you're active in like a creative or marketing industry, then it's expected that your resume is not super creative in terms of design. Just make sure it looks balanced, clear, and clean. Finally, once you're finished, you will need to export your document to a PDF file. So you will need to upload your resume or CV in a PDF format in the online application. Finally, let's quickly or briefly address the recommendation letter. So as part of the application, you will need to submit 3 recommendation letters. And the first step will be for you to identify your 3 recommenders. So these can be professors, teachers, current or former employers, mentors, or advisors. So it's up to you to ask your recommenders for a recommendation letter. Now, technically, you will need to register your recommenders in your online application. So there is a section called recommendations. You will see that you can add your chosen recommenders. You can add their email. They will receive an automatic email so they can they can upload their recommendation. For you, it's important to follow up on your recommendations because all documents and your application needs to be submitted by December 1st. So we need to have received everything by December 1st, including your recommendation letters. You can follow up on this in the online application. You will be able to see the status of each recommender. So whether they already uploaded or completed their recommendation. If not, you can send them reminders via the system or even separately, of course, by email, because probably you will have been in touch with them separately in advance by email anyway. So just make sure to follow up on it by December 1st. I think the best tip that we can give, and this doesn't come as a surprise, we generally recommend to only ask recommendations from individuals that know you well and that can provide a relevant and a strong recommendation. So this is basically the best tip that we can give. So recommendation letters are a very important part of your application. So you just need to make sure that you ask someone that you know that they can write something relevant, that they have known you for at least a significant amount of time, in order for them to write a good and strong recommendation, and not a generic one. So again, it's important for you to consider very well who you ask for a recommendation, and of course have them submitted by December 1st. Okay, so this ends the video on useful tips on how to prepare your Fulbright application. If you have any more specific questions about your application, you can of course always send us an email at info@fulbright.be.